sustainability question comes up when you're living outside the natural growth rate. The second question is that, what is the meaning of sustainability if it has no meaning for the consumer? Consumers are different across the world. If we, by some quirk of fate, say that starting from tomorrow, the 4 million, the Indian Railway carries 4 million people every day in its trains, out of which 1.5 million is only in Bombay. And the Dabbawalas are here, we must listen to them in the afternoon and really understand from them how they manage within this 1.5 million to deliver your dabba or your lunch box to your house exactly on time. If we were to say suddenly that 1.5 million people will only travel in seated comfort, nobody will stand in a train, and all trains would be air conditioned. Just imagine. In the same capacity, you'll probably take only a third of that. You need 3 times the number of trains, you have probably 3 times the amount of cost, then you're asking questions of sustainability. The Indian public transport is one of the most efficient because it is the most crowded. Where capital use, we sweat capital, not only sweat it, we sweat it to the point of brick, and we still run with broken assets, but it's the most efficient use of capital in the world, whether you're trains, whether it's buses, whether it's roads, where you have 3 lanes, you have actually 6 lanes of traffic. So the point is that the consumer has a certain use of infrastructure or consumable products, and according to that, we arrange everything else to meet that particular requirement. So there cannot be any question of sustainability if you don't answer what the consumer wants, or there is a legal framework. There used to be a time in India where edible oil used to be sold loose, and in some rural areas, even today it is, because the consumer cannot afford to buy 1 liter of oil. They buy in terms of grams because it's not the per kg cost which is important, but the amount of money that they have in hand. The largest percentage of India's population are daily wage earners. They do not get monthly salaries. What they earn today, they live by what they earn and what the money in hand. But today, there's hardly any loose oil being sold. Most of it is packaged. The moment packaging happens, you use plastic, and therefore cost of oil goes up. Therefore, disposal plastic comes up. Though you're doing a good thing on the one side, you're actually creating plastic on the other. Therefore, there is no sustainability unless it is a seesaw. What you do good in one area is actually not doing pretty good in some other area. The removal of carry bags in retail stores is considered to be good, but you want to substitute it with brown paper bags, which will then deforest. I think that's a bad option, but in India, we have a way out. We tell all our consumers, bring your own shopping basket, shopping bag, and that's actually happening in Delhi. That's a good thing. Therefore, the second point is the consumer or the law must dictate what sustainability should actually mean. The last point I want to make, I'll just take 2 more minutes. From an agri point of view, the company that the Future Fresh Foods buys fruit and vegetable from the farmers. And I was in Mancher area in Maharashtra the other day, and we got a group of farmers, and they were complaining to us about either there is flood or there is drought. There is nothing in between. So I asked them, do you have rainwater harvesting? They hadn't even heard about it, right? Now that's the problem. Where is the government putting all its money? Where is the sustainability going to come from? Can we, and hardly 5-10% of the farmers are drip irrigated. I'm talking about small farmers who are about less than an acre in size. If they're not drip irrigated, then they're not using water well enough. I understand, and this may be part of a folklore, but the Krishna River in Andhra Pradesh actually discharges, the amount of fresh water it discharges during rainfall is probably 8 times of the drinking water requirement of Tamil Nadu. And therefore, we had something called a Buckingham Canal, which the British built, and that used to secure all the fresh water, and it used to be used for agriculture. Today, the Buckingham Canal is no more there. It's not dredged, it's not maintained, and therefore, we have a problem. Therefore, when you talk of sustainability, it's, I think, fuzzy logic to me. It's very difficult to actually explain what sustainability means. We are, I think, floundering in the definition and floundering in the implementation. We need far sharper and localized definition of sustainability in India before we can actually take the next step.
So thank you, Mr. Radha. I think he has put forward a nice view about sustainability and how it gels with the consumer and some real ground problem. We move on to Sanjeev for your views and ideas.
Good morning. So I want to start with a little submission that the Indian consumer is actually very green. And to support that, let me share a statistic with you. So this is 2010 data from World Bank statistics. The Indian consumer's carbon footprint is 1.7 tons per annum. And the Chinese footprint is 6.2. And the American footprint is 17.8. So if you look at it, today the Indian consumer is actually very green. But we cannot overlook the fact that everybody wants a better lifestyle, and the bulk of the population is living in circumstances in the rural areas, for example, where the means of transportation is a bicycle or even by walking. When they actually become owners of a motor vehicle or they start consuming more protein, so let's say vegetables, meat, that's when the problem really will start to come up in a massive way. Now, the other interesting thing about India that you must remember is bulk of the population is vegetarian. And interestingly, 15% of greenhouse gas emission in the planet by human beings is because of livestock. And this is a FAO statistic. So in India, when the meat consumption, etc., will increase, which will happen with living, with lifestyle improvement, you'll have all kinds of challenges. So I think it's very important for not just the government, but the industry, and particularly the retail network, because you sit right in the middle of consumption and production, and the producers to realize the kind of issues that are going to come up and face India as the income levels improve. Now, I've had a fair amount of global experience working with a lot of retailers, a lot of fashion retailers. In fact, I was talking to Tamara at the break. Many of the brand names she put up, I've actually worked with them as a supplier. What I want to kind of, mention here is that this whole CSR sustainability subject really started off not by companies wanting to do the right thing, but it started off because some of the big brands got a kick in their backside. And the most famous case of this was in the 80s when Nike got real bad publicity because of the worker practices in Indonesia. And that's where this entire thing started with all the brands, we've got to be, we need CSR, we need this and that. Having said that, and this is not because we are working on a European project, but I've noticed over the years that there are European retailers, some of them, have actually consciously over the last 30, 40 years really built up very strong practices in this area. I mean, to name companies like IKEA, for example. So internationally, the two things have happened. People start talking about CSR sustainability because of activism, but there were a few firms which actually figured out that this is a source of competitive advantage. So if you look at how this sustainability gets embraced, you have companies which try and do compliance. So you have local laws and they kind of try and do that compliance. Then there are companies which in India, I think a lot of companies at this stage, they try and do risk mitigation or reputation to protect. But the third stage is actually when you start seeing cost benefits and serious cost benefit. And the fourth is when you really start creating value. So in India, I think with the kind of problems that will emerge with this increased consumption, I mean, there is no way but for companies to, go down that path and look at a lot more about cost savings, look at the strategic value that can be created. Now, interestingly, if you look at a company like Walmart, they believe about 90% of their carbon footprint actually sits in the supply chain. So in India, we have multiple challenges, I think, because a lot of the supply base for retailers particularly is SME sector. And in SME, you have issues of, these firms are anyway under pressure themselves because of limited resources, the regulatory issues. So, if you go and talk to them and say, sustainability, let's make these green products and green supply chain, and by the way, the consumer is not going to pay you anything extra, you have lots of challenges that will come up. Shikhar, just to add to the project description that you gave, with the support of European Union, this project has been created by CII and the Retailer Association of India, which is called Green Retail. And there are 4 firms which are helping in this project. Stenematial, one of them. And we are hoping that we will create an online database where, whether it's an SME, a large organized retailer, they can get knowledge which they can then use to become, far better on this journey of sustainability. And this project is a 4-year project. Year 1 is up. So you should start seeing the Green Retail website in a few months as more and more data, case studies will get added on to that. So talking a little bit more about the international scenario, I'll give you a couple of examples on how these retailers have found areas where they can make improvement with simple things. Carrefour, which is one of the biggest retailers out of Europe, they discovered that 15% of the energy consumption in the store actually happens in the meat section. And a simple solution to that, apart from putting in black curtains and all, was to lower the ceiling in the meat section compared to the rest of the store. So, a lot of solutions that these people come up with are not technology driven, they are not driven by capital expenditure, but I think they're driven because the top management in some of these firms like IKEA, Carrefour, whatever, are actually driven by the concept of sustainability. They don't make a mockery of it, they don't laugh it off and, whether this will work or this will not work. And they have seen competitive advantages really coming out of this kind of an approach. So, with that perspective, I'll, Shikhar, hand it back to you. And we'll take up any questions as we come up later.
Thanks, Sanjeev. I think we have captured it well. That means we are starting at a point where we are assuming, with the data that you said, that Indian consumer is already a green in the global perspective. And I think it will be good for us to start now, before we start going to those figures of 6.7 and 17.8 that you were quoting. Because I just remember that when the consumption of meat started more in China, the rate increased more in US. Because they were exporting most of the meat to US. And because now there is an internal consumption in China increasing, the rates of the meat goes high in US. So that's how the interconnectivity of the world takes place. Let's go further. Let's go to Somnath now and have his views from Marigo. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. What I want to touch upon is basically that everyone in this room has an opportunity to impact sustainability, and in some way or other definitely are doing it, despite all the constraints that we have. So if you see retailers, the retail industry particularly is very beautifully positioned right in the middle of the product life cycle. So on the one hand, you have the manufacturers and their sourcing. On the other hand, you have the consumers with the usage and probably disposal. And given this unique position, retail can have a huge influence across the span, not only on environment, but also on social as well as on economic sustainability. Having said that, why am I saying that? I want to bring out a point that if you look at the matrix, if you divide the sustainability efforts, they are largely divided into two parts. One is about avoiding harm. So you have the tangibles of costs and intangibles of risk.